I'm going to keep working this hard, I think I might want to do it for myself. What about a laundromat? They're going to hand me an operating framework? I was paying them before anybody else. But when I knew, I knew. Everybody has something to contribute.
Hey everyone, Dave Menz, Laundromat Millionaire, back here with another fantastic episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. I'm with a pretty cool dude that we're going to get to know today. I'm pretty excited about this. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about something that's kind of one of the buzzwords in our industry right now. And what that is building a new laundromat and franchising. Is it for you? Is it the right fit or is it not? So this is going to be a pretty cool episode. I'm actually looking forward to learning some things myself, which I'm never afraid to do. But now I'm going to turn it over to you-know-who, my beautiful wife, Carla.
All right. So today we have a wonderful guest with us. Our guest today is Brian Riseland from Seattle, Washington. Brian is a new laundromat owner opening his first Laundry Genius store in Everett, Washington, only a few months ago. And this was a new construction project. While he aspires for more, Brian is still trying to get his feet under him with that first one. He likes to say his story is laptops to laundromats because he spent 25 years in tech, most of it at Microsoft, working on the Windows businesses. Today, we're going to visit with Brian to discuss the good, bad, and ugly about building a new construction laundromat from scratch. And we're excited to hear his journey and to learn from his experiences. So, Brian, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm flattered to be able to be part of this podcast. I've listened to it so many times over my journey, so it's awesome to be a part of it now.
Oh, well, thank you. We appreciate you being a guest and being the audience. You're a double dipper. We'll take it. And by the way, I forget to tell people. So for our audience out there, we're always looking for guests. I don't do a good enough job of this, so I'm going to try to do this right now. We're always looking for really cool and unique stories about people that are small business owners. Maybe you're in the laundromat industry and maybe you're not. So if it's something you're interested in, if you think you'd be a good fit for this podcast to be a guest and you think that you could bring value to the audience, go to our website, Laundromat Millionaire, click on the podcast link, and there's a guest link down at the bottom, and just fill that little thing out. It's real quick. Fill it out, send it over to us, and we'd love to have a chat with you and see if it's a good fit. Because one of the things we talked about, Brian, with off the line is, a lot of times people feel like maybe they're not worthy or they don't have enough value.
We're not worthy
To bring to the industry. And chances are, if you think that, you're probably wrong. So let's have a chat. Let's talk, because we're just about bringing people together in the industry and sharing knowledge and information. So I hope it's okay that I threw that in there real quick. But listen, man, I have two quick questions before I ask you to give us your backstory. One of them is laptops to laundromats. That's pretty daggone clever. Good for you. I think that probably speaks for itself, but I think that's pretty clever. Is there more to that, or is it just kind of clever that you came up with?
So it was a clever thing, but what I've been doing, especially over like the past 3 months, as I've gotten, going through the time up to the store and the opening of the store, I've been just jotting down stuff because I feel like, I don't know if it's a dedicated blog or something like that, but like I said, when you get back, I feel there's some articles I could write, and a lot of them start with what it was like here versus there. What are the similarities of a tech industry business and a laundromat business, because it's actually the metrics I use are so close to an online business. It's crazy.
Really?
What did I learn from doing, working with some real brand experts, like the guys that were behind the Verizon Can You Hear Me Now campaign? They came to Microsoft, I got to work with them. How did I take that learning and apply it to the opening of my store? So yeah, it's just all this stuff I learned in tech. How am I applying it to laundromats? And sometime I'm going to find the time to start jotting it all down and posting it up there and hopefully helping people out.
That's awesome. You already brought value, because I'm going to tell our audience real quick too, for everybody listening and watching out there. We should all be doing that. Because we can all bring value. You don't have to have a podcast. You don't even have to have a blog. Tell your story, share your knowledge, share the things that you're learning with each other. And that's what's really going to, what I call, elevate the industry. It's not just something that, me or Carla or Jordan Berry or whatever. It's not just things that a few people do. It's things that our industry does collectively. And I love that you're already thinking that way. And good for you. If we can ever help you support that in any way, let us know.
Well, and everybody can get on the forums,
Absolutely.
Get on Facebook groups and contribute that way, even if you don't want to do your own blog or podcast or whatever.
Yeah, just networking. Get out there and talk to people. Help people when you can. And believe it or not, it's how all this Laundromat Millionaire stuff started for me. Was I was just active on the Facebook groups as a newbie, and back then it was actually the CLA forum, and now it's more Facebook groups and the CLA forum and stuff, and Jordan's forum on Laundromat Resource and things like that. But the other question I have for you before we get into your backstory, Laundry Genius. I'm sure this isn't the first time you've gotten that question. Tell me about that.
So one of the things when I got to this point is I wanted a brand, right? And I think that there's a lot of discussion on like what matters about a brand. Does a brand matter for a laundromat, right? And so I decided I had to come up with a name, and I am convinced that there's going to be more of these,
sure,
right? So then it was like that ruled out the geographic names and things like that. And, it's like what can carry and what's a name for the company that could also carry other things? Like, what if I want to offer products and things like that? What would be a name for that stuff? So, when you start thinking about the stuff that laundromats offer people, right? And it's funny is learning is it's even people that have a laundry room in their home is honestly, we're a smarter way to get your laundry done often, right? Whether you are the person that's taking advantage of drop off and getting that time back, or, if you go around and you look at you sit in laundromats, like you see, like it was a mind blowing thing for me to go into a laundromat at like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday and watch, I don't know, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, come in with all this laundry, right? Bat, 3 machines side by side, get them going, then 2 dryers to dry them all. And they were out of there in probably, their laundry was done in like an hour, maybe took them another half hour to fold it because there was so much. But you look at that, it's like, man, how do I talk to people who have these piles of laundry? Like, come in, do it here. And instead of waiting around the house all day, just come and do this. So smarter was kind of one of the things that I wanted to hang on and modern, and went through, a lot of just jotting stuff down, testing it with friends and things like that. And, that's where Laundry Genius came out, because I thought it was a name or one piece of your brand identity that would grow along with my aspirations.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm glad I asked you that question because we need to talk more offline, but I won't take up too much of this episode with that. I'm a branding guy. Not that I'm good at it. I'm just fascinated by it. I love branding, and I think it's way more powerful than, quite frankly, the small business world gives it credit for.
100%. This is one of the things why, I'm convinced it was the right decision to spend time in this area, because I feel like my brand, and that's manifested through the name, the store design, the logo, and really at the end of the day, it really comes down to your customer experience. After people get past that stuff, your customer experience is the way you deliver on your brand, especially in this industry. But I feel like it helped me punch above my weight, right? I mean, it is, I was able to attract employees, right? And customers are coming in because they think this is something bigger. They're like, how many of these are there? Where are the other ones? It's like, no. This is the first one. I think there's going to be more. I learned along the way, but it really is funny is when someone talked about how the laundromat is an extension of people's homes, right? I think it was one of Jordan's podcasts that came up. And it's really interesting in the first few weeks of being in the store so much is how people identify with their laundromat.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's just fascinating how you just become a part of people's lives.
Yes, you absolutely do. And if we don't understand that, appreciate that, and take that on as what I call our obligation, and I mean that in a positive way, not a negative way, I think that's a big part of being a business owner, and I know it's a big part of being a successful business owner. So you already know this, but you're definitely on the right track, no doubt about it. All right, so let's talk about this, man. Let's dig into your story, because I am positive there's things to learn in here, and I'm excited to learn them, but I'm also excited for everybody else to learn them too. So we're going to dive into that backstory. Tell me a little bit about your backstory and your life growing up and what made Brian who he is today.
Yeah, I'm a Seattle boy, born and bred. I talked about my folks as my life has really been a 60-mile radius. I grew up just north of Seattle. I went to college just south of Seattle. Now I live just east of Seattle. And I think when I retire, I might retire west of Seattle.
Just to hit all four sides.
Yeah.
Sounds like Seattle has everything you need.
I mean, Seattle's a great place for me. And, it's changed a lot since I grew up here. But it's one of those things is I knew in my mid-20s, like it was the right place for me. But yeah, so born and bred on that side. He's actually not like what shaped me. Like my experiences are shaped by sports, right? Like my participation in, and now as an adult, coaching, officiating, things like that. But really, kind of the turning point for me, because I was, you can't tell sitting down, but I'm like 6'7". Right? I'm really tall.
I didn't.
Yeah, I was a really tall, skinny, uncoordinated kid. And I was a coach who believed in me when he showed up at our high school. And, I went from literally over the course of the year, basically sitting on the bench in a C team to the following year getting minutes in a varsity game. And a lot of that was just because the guy believed in me. And, that opened the door for me to go play small college basketball. It's a great place. I said where I went, Pacific Lutheran University, great place for a slow guy to go play basketball and rack student loans. But the experience, friends to this day, the stuff that I've learned, but so it's sports. And that is, I think, the number one influence on my life and what people can learn from that. But, like I said, I was slow and I couldn't jump. So my basketball career ended after college, and I was fine with that. And I went on straight out of college. I joined Microsoft. I was fortunate. It was in 1992. So still, really rapid period of growth. And I joined in a call center, taking phone calls, literally 100 calls a day, like rapid fire. This is pre-internet, right? So the only thing people had was calling you on the phone. And they would call up, we would pre-sell products and things like that. But the number one thing we really did was decide whether or not someone was worthy of getting their floppy disks replaced, or the popular one was mouse balls at the time. And I know I'm dating myself, but what you would find is that, kids in schools would take the mouse balls out of the mice because they were great to throw at people. And you would get these calls from the desperate teachers, and, the funny thing, and this is one of those things, and I'm going to take it a little far, but when you talk about like empowerment, right? Like I was fully empowered. Like I could have charged that teacher for 20 mouse balls, right? But, it was like, but I was empowered if I thought the situation warranted to just send that out. Like I could send out whatever product I wanted for free. And probably if I sent too many out, someone probably would have showed up at my desk. But, it was a great lesson about empowerment. It was an incredible lesson about empathy. Like empathy is something I talk to my team a lot about, just because the situations we're often presented with, given where our stores are located. And, in my case, there's a fair amount of homeless population in the vicinity. And empathy is just an incredible thing. So I went through Microsoft. I left for a stint in the 2000s, like so many people, to try my hand at a startup thing. Ultimately came back, but my career at Microsoft was spent really kind of a mix on the product marketing side and also on this, it would be on the sales and marketing side. So the folks that are responsible for selling products to our customers, working with partners and things like that. And that was kind of my niche, was in the middle, working with these folks is taking strategy and landing it out through lots of people. And that's, kind of why I felt I was well equipped to be an operator. But in that period, like within the product marketing teams, like within the sales force, I was exposed to some incredible leaders who taught me about career development, employee management and things like that. I mean, those were great. And on the product marketing side, like I worked on the Windows Phone business. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Like we had a great product that never got traction in the marketplace. And I still to this day, still think there's things about it that are better than you can find on either iOS and Android. But at that point, I got to work with some real consumer marketing experts, and those are the people that totally changed my opinion on brand, right? I mean, that was it. Like I thought it wasn't worthy, and like I was like, oh my God, it matters.
I think branding and that marketing and those types of things are a lot of times misunderstood and maybe even completely discounted, especially in the small business world. What were a few things that you picked up? Because it sounds like you were dealing with some real powerhouses. And as like a small business owner myself and probably all, if not majority of our audience, I think we might have loved to have been a fly on the wall.
Yeah. I mean, it's a ton. Let's see, what's this? So probably probably the biggest takeaway was people want to identify with things, right? It is, for lack of a better term, it is tribal, right? They want to identify things that share their values. That was one of the things, and then how you express those values to signal to people that you're worthy of doing it. Because a lot of times people make their decision on consumer products, much more about what they think the brand is about than the actual product features and things like that. So that's one, and then that probably the other one was really just the concept of the single main idea. Like you can only hold so many positions in people's head, and it's really just one. Like when it comes down to it, what is the one thing that you want to get across to people about your products and your brand? I think it's a lot more complex in tech because you're trying to jam so much into this little device in that case, and it can do so many things. But it rings true. Like if you look at the copy I write and things like that to try and talk, like potential ads, it's like it's super simple. Try to get one. Don't over complexify it because you can't communicate those things. So that's probably less about brand, but more about just the marketing fundamentals of how like I said, these are the folks that came up with the "Can you hear me now?" from Verizon.
Can you hear me now?
How do you build America's largest wireless network?
Can you hear me now? Good.
By never being satisfied.
And that's stuck in our heads to this day. And,
Yep.
you even see one of the carriers brought the guy back out to use as a switcher thing. So it's just it's just the power of how you can do that stuff. And I don't think that we should dismiss it as small business owners, right? Because people are making those same decisions, but just within our neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm always, as you probably know, Brian, because you said you follow me, but as you know, I'm always talking about elevating the industry, and there's a million different ways that we can be better as an industry than we were, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, but even longer back than that, or even 5 years ago, maybe. And I feel like that's one of those things. Is that a observation you've seen as well as someone that's coming into the industry from the, let's call it, outside?
100%. I probably, if I only had aspirations, and this is me personally talking, not just about single, if I only had aspirations to do a single store, and that is like, I might more seriously have considered the path. I could build the case for calling my laundromat the 75th and Evergreen Way laundromat and things like that, or the Cascade Plaza laundromat, right? Just really super identify with those things, but and that's fine, but I think that some of the objectives that people are trying to achieve with, in particular, place-based names, can be achieved better with how you do your online marketing and really paying close attention to what you're doing on Google My Business and on making your stuff show up in maps. Because it really comes down to search terms, and people are looking at for laundromat near me. And like I said, I think I can achieve those things. And then for me, it was fun to create a brand and identify and design my store to try and do those things. So it's like, and it's not that much more expensive, right? I mean, the second color of paint maybe be a little more and stuff like that, but it's not, and it's so much more accessible. And that probably is another part of it that I think, even if you go back like 3 years, right? Not even going back distance, is, using services like Fiverr and Design Crowd for design contests. Like all these things are totally accessible to anyone and really, really affordable. And they're like cheap mistakes you could make. Like I ran a design contest that resulted in my logo. I think I put the top prize at $200, right? I had probably 700 logos to look at on that stuff. Yeah. And, and then you find one, and then you work with the designer and you refine it. But it's like, even if I didn't, right? Even if there wasn't the one out of those 700, I probably would have been able to put on a piece of paper and scratch down the one that I thought was closer, and then go out to, in this case, someone like Fiverr, where you, instead of putting out a contest for everybody, you go and you find a person willing to work on a project, and, pay them $100 to work on this stuff and come to something together. And, there's the person that I end up doing that with, there's still someone in my net. I'm like, hey, can you tweak this? Right. That stuff is just like, and it's just a $5-10 transaction.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for allowing me to derail you from your backstory a little.
Oh, no problem.
All right. So here you are. Is it fair to say you're mid-career at Microsoft at this point when I derailed you?
Mid to late career. I guess it was mid-career in a lifestyle, but what I could probably see was it was more late in my career at Microsoft, right? Like a lot of folks, like I was hitting 50, right? A nice time for introspection. My son was graduating from high school. I was very fortunate that I was awarded a sabbatical that I took in the summer of 2018, 2019, like the summer before COVID, whatever that was. And as part of that, I was doing some like serious introspection about what I wanted out of my career. And kind of everything that looking forward at Microsoft, I love Microsoft. Like I still use the products. My wife still works there. The things that company has provided for my life are incredible. Like there's not a bad thing I can say about the company. But as I looked ahead, if I wanted to keep advancing, the sacrifices on my time, I wasn't necessarily willing to make the trade-off, and it's a competitive environment, and there was people that were willing to make those. And kind of what it came down to is this is like the first seed of like, if I'm going to keep working this hard, I think I might want to do it for myself. Kind of after that, and it came back, and I was back for a few months, and Microsoft offered me the opportunity to walk away, and I took it. Right. I kind of looked for other jobs within the company, but you hear from my mindset, I was really, really super picky, and ultimately decided that wasn't where I was going to continue. Kind of as I exited, one of the benefits was kind of career coaching, an outplacement firm, whatever you want to call it. And, they offer a bunch of seminars, and one of the early ones was on entrepreneurship. And there was two guys, one about buying a business and one about franchising. And really, the franchising guy opened my eyes because I thought franchises were all about sandwich shops and things like that. But you hear about all these businesses, business to business type of things. And it's like, okay, he's talking about, it's like, all right, this is interesting, because a lot of what I did at Microsoft was develop frameworks and systems and stuff for other people to go execute against, what the goals were from the top. Like, so they're going to hand me an operating framework? This is kind of cool. So I went through the process with him, but I investigated probably 3 or 4 franchises that he decided were good for me. Like one was a locksmith, and I think one was a property management firm. And then kind of ultimately I'm like, I'm not right for me. So we sat down for lunch and we were regrouping, and he just happened to say, what about a laundromat? And I'm like, a laundromat? And literally from the back to the front of my brain came a podcast that I'd listened to probably a year earlier on the Bigger Pockets podcast, the real estate podcast. And the guy that was on there, his name escapes me, but he is the owner of Laundry Love in Abilene, Texas. And he came on and talked about the laundromat business. And so literally this shot to the front of my head. I'm like, yeah, tell me more. And he looked at me and he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I hear these are really good businesses. So I went down the path really, really far with a laundromat franchise. Kind of it all went, all the way down to discovery day. Then COVID hit and no one could fly anywhere. So I was kind of glad that I did that. And but ultimately, I because of like this control and some other stuff, just about franchise models, I decided it wasn't right for me. But I learned enough going through that process that I was able to find the right partners, and decided that if I was going to do this, I was going to do it on my own. Right. I'll chalk up, I'll make the, whatever the franchise fee was, like I'll make that much in mistakes on my own because of my aspirations and my desire for control, like especially my aspirations. Like if I do that, like I'm going to pay these guys a lot of money, over $1 million over the course of a 10-year agreement. Like, no, I don't, it wasn't there for me, right? Wonderful, wonderful people. And, like I said, for me, it just came down to maybe it's ego, right? Or confidence, you can call it what you want, right? It doesn't really matter. The word you put on it is because I thought I had the skills and I wanted to be the final decision maker. Like that was kind of a hallmark of some of my jobs at Microsoft. It's like I was playing with the big boys, but I was making recommendations and wasn't necessarily responsible if the program succeeded or failed. Right? I wanted that. I wanted to be the final decision maker, and if I did the franchise route, there was always going to be someone who had that, and maybe not authority on enforcement of policies, but like had that thing over me that I was accountable to. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I found, a great distributor to work with and started the journey. And I'm fortunate to be here today with a store that's open. Took a while to get there to open, but also because of how, I'm able to do this portfolio career. So I still do consulting back in the tech industry. And that's been an important step because I do like the business problems there. I do like the people. I'm getting to choose to work with friends from my network along the way, but it's also because of, what I can make there as my laundromat grows, it's forced me to be really strong on systems and processes and things on that at the laundromat. So I don't have to be there all the time. I wasn't into buying a job. You got to release a couple things. And you got to start growing the business because it's been fun. Like I've been growing, like consistent growth, all that stuff. Yeehaw. But it's still not where I needed to be, wanted to be. So having those systems and tools allow me to, do these other things that make me whole, but also allow us to grow the business and hopefully provide opportunities for my people.
I'm curious, going back to the franchise thing. So I know you said it wasn't right for you. You wanted that independent control. Looking back, you went so far through the process. Can you discuss kind of the pros and cons you saw of franchising, like for anyone? If someone were to come to you with advice, say, hey, should I franchise? What would you say to them?
I would say number one thing, and it's like really like, so like, what are you looking to get out of it? Why is that your consideration? Right. And because that kind of really can lead you down the path. But when you look at like the number one or two, right, there's two things that I believe that any franchise can provide someone. And one is the brand and the identity work, right? And especially in the case where there's lots of them, the advertising and the marketing muscle of a global brand or national or regional or what have you, right? And, like I said, despite my strong passion about my brand, like I think talked earlier about kind of why I went that way, like, your customers still do come from a short radius pretty much. And most of them aren't going to drive by another store to do that stuff. But having having someone that's really smart, thinking about the brand and identity. And, when you have a core of people in the area, like, the one franchise really successful in Arizona, right? Like then it's like, it starts to add up. So that's one. Do they have a brand or not, and what it is, and what's their role in building it, and things like that. And the other one is just that operating framework, right? If that like is the most valuable piece. Is like, I've spent countless hours writing down stuff, like searching through forums and things like that, or going to the notes. Like I'm a huge podcast listener, but most of the time it's in my car. So I have these like scribbles. Like I try to go back and like 2016 on this is like, go back and listen and grab that. Write it down. Like I've like done all that stuff for store number one. Like I could have bought all that stuff, but like it's like now it's like when store number two happens, like I'm set. Like I have my list of stuff I need to purchase. Like I have preferences and all that stuff, and it's like bang, I'm ready to go. So I think it's what's the brand and what does that umbrella provide you? It's not just about a logo or anything like that, but it's just something that brings value to you. And the operating framework. And then probably a third thing, and this one, I think in every industry, it's not just the laundromat industry, gets kind of lessened by the year, is the community, right? Having a group of other owners in a franchise group that you can communicate with, and because of boundaries and stuff, you're not competing with them. But honestly, like the stuff that I'm able to gather from Facebook groups, like this is probably, at least I'd say the pocket of people, and I don't know how big it is, that are contributing to these areas. This is one of the most similar things to the tech industry where, developers, like it's all about community, They're not just contributing like thoughts, they're contributing code that other people can go build their applications on. Like that's the whole open source thing like that. It's just like there's so much that I think I can draw from, I have drawn from the community, and those connections that probably are another reason that I would say just look at it, like understand why you want to do it, what the benefits you're going to get out of it, and know what you think you bring to the table. And for me, like I felt I was strong on brand and marketing, and I was strong on operations. So I decided it wasn't a right fit for me.
So you mentioned that you could buy those things, but you also mentioned, I think I heard this right. You mentioned $1 million was if you hit your goals, you thought you would spend $1 million. I'm guessing that's in like royalties or franchise fees.
Yeah.
Over a 10-year period of time.
Yeah.
So obviously you determined that those things weren't anywhere near worth $1 million.
No, I think at the time, the franchise fee was probably 40 to 50 grand. So the upfront that you pay, in this case, it was a fee for one store. That's the cost that I compared that to. Is like I figured chalk up my time, whatever. Like I probably paid about that much, and still have some room for mistakes on that side of the equation. And then it was just like because and this is also could be a case that is more unique to me than some other folks. Is I would have been the first one for that franchise in the Pacific Northwest, right? Yeah. So every dollar that's going to marketing is me building up another brand. And if I'm, not growing fast enough or things like that, and all of a sudden, they set your territories, it's great. But someone comes outside of that, it's like, wow, they've kind of got to draft off my local dollars here. That it just wasn't right for me personally, where I was at in my mindset, but also I think because of the geography in the Pacific Northwest, or the Seattle area in particular. I didn't want to be the one who was responsible for building that brand.
Yeah.
I hope it's okay that I ask you this. If and feel free to not answer it. I'm putting you on the spot. But I think there's a lot of people in this place mentally when it comes to, I mean, as you know, there's like 10 different franchises out there in our industry right now. Was there a number where you would have been like, that might have been worth it? Like 50,000 plus $1 million over 10 years clearly wasn't worth it, you're saying. Would there have been a point where you were like, I mean, it sounds like their value proposition wasn't even close to what you were going to pay in franchise fees and royalties and perpetuity and things like that. Was there a point where you might have felt it was worth it?
Maybe, but I'm not gonna directly answer your question, because I think that if it was off my bottom line and not my top line, I would be more comfortable with it. But I was paying them before anybody else, right?
Great point.
Yeah, and it's like, look, and I get it. And franchises are established business models and all this stuff. Like I said, I got no ill will against franchises. I shop with them and all this stuff. But you just know what the margins are like in this business and what you're trying to do, and like how costs can pop up, right? And it's just like, yeah, like it is a partnership. We are in business together, but yeah, I'm incurring a lot of the, all the risk. And so it's like I said, I probably would be more open to a franchise model that if it was involved royalties would look more at bottom line part to really, really be partners.
Mm-hmm. I don't like to take things for granted, and me and Carla know what you're talking about. Can you tell us the difference in top line and bottom line for those that maybe don't know?
Yeah, so gross revenue, like every dollar that goes in the machine or comes in through your desk for wash, dry, fold, or pickup and delivery, like they get a percentage of that before you pay your rent, before you pay your employees, before, right? So that's the top line, and the bottom line is that the profit, what comes down to the bottom after all those things on that side of you.
So you're saying in I don't want to say all, but in that franchise model, you would have paid a percentage of your gross revenue. So let's say hypothetically your laundromat made $1 million a year in gross revenue, but didn't make any profit for whatever reason, didn't make any profit. You would still pay royalties in perpetuity, which means forever, or at least the length of the agreement.
10-year agreement, yeah.
Right, 10-year agreement. And you would have paid royalties on those, even though you weren't actually making any profit, hypothetically.
Hypothetically, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes total sense to me. Fantastic. Well, now let's dive into the fun stuff that I know our audiences wants to hear about. So you decided the laundromat business, you decided that a franchise wasn't for you. Were these two things, or not those two things, but was deciding a franchise wasn't for you and that you were going to build your own model, did those happen in unison? Or was it a very defined, like the whole time you thought you were going to go with a franchise, and then all of a sudden you were like, yeah, I can't do this. And so you had to completely shift gears into this other model of being free.
Yeah, probably more coordinated. It was like maybe I had decided that the laundromat business was something that I wanted to get into. So I knew my what. Mm-hmm. Then it became down to a how. And so I was kind of on parallel tracks investigating both hows. And one of those hows was franchises, and one of those hows was doing it on my own. Right. And like that's when I knew this was the step, and I thought I could do great here. And then it was like when I came to that point, like probably the steps leading up to it were long and intertwined. But when I knew. And I think that might just be a function of like, I research everything too much at times. Like, for me personally, I need to get in the weeds, make sure I understand it. And I said, understand like all the component parts, who's doing what, how, what, when, why. And then, like I said, like then I need to get out of it. Right. And, in this case, try to put those things on other people. So yeah, it was like slow then fast, but it was quick. Like when the decision was made, like I knew, right. And there was no going back. Like then it was just going forward in the model that was my own.
Mm-hmm.
Once you decided, okay, I don't want the franchise, I'm going to build my own store. So you've gone through the what, the laundromat, the how, you're going to build your own. Now get me to the where. Can you talk to me about how did you decide where was a good location? How did you examine the market to make sure that it was a feasible location for this business?
Okay. The where. So number one on my where really was distance from my house. It was a key factor. And then looking at where the demographics mapped on that stuff, and then on kind of where there were holes. So the problem with where I live is twofold. It's not the one is not a great, those typical renter population below the median or right near below the median income. Like that wasn't like right next door to my house. And then I also had to narrow things down a little more because I just ruled out the city of Seattle altogether. I think nationally people can see the kind of the way the city was run and things like that with CHOP and things like that. And I just wasn't comfortable being a business owner of any type in the city of Seattle. So that kind of left kind of North Seattle and south of Seattle, and north of Seattle is much closer to me. So so then we just decided to go and kind of draw that boundaries, and I lucked out. Like, hearing the story, like people, it takes them 6 months to find their location. Like on day one visit, second visit, like we found the place.
Wow.
Like, found the place. It was a vacant Payless shoe store, right? We looked at other ones, but like that was it. Like had all the parking. Like this is where I was fortunate. My distributor, Rich Boyd, like he just brought in so much knowledge and like he knows like the finer points to look at, and he was able to go back and check on utilities and ask the questions. But like it's like, no man, like this is the place. Mm-hmm. And so that was in like the first week of June of 2020.
What size is the building, by the way?
It's a 4,000 square foot building, standalone. It's just I lucked out, right, for what I wanted to do. It was just great.
Perfect.
What's the name of your distributor? I know you said Rich Boyd.
Rich Boyd. His company is Sesco Equipment.
Okay.
So they're part of the Laundry Lux family now. Yeah.
And they are a Laundry Lux distributor in the Seattle area. Are they a distributor outside of Seattle?
I know like he's working on his crew. They're working on a few stores in Idaho right now. So like they're going gangbusters. He's it's just a testament to him. Like he's a great business partner, and it's no wonder that people want to build more stores with him. And he's definitely about kind of in tune with the higher end store. Like I think we push each other on this stuff, on stuff I wanted that he's just like, yeah, and things I wanted where I would dig in my heels. And it was just fun to have a design partner on this stuff that was able to, you know, to just trade ideas and make decisions based on wisdom and things like that, versus just like, oh no, like I build the stores this way and that much, and this is this, and you want to put this in there, like why are you spending money there? You'd be like, okay, so that's an expensive decision. These are your other options. Like, is that where you want to spend your money? Right. And for me, and he learned early on, for me, it was all about customer experience. Right. So then we had a principle on with is like, does that improve the customer? It's like, okay. So yeah, I mean, it was just like, I couldn't say enough good about working with him and his team. And even like after 8 weeks, like they're so responsive and making sure even the littlest stuff gets taken care of. I'm like so fortunate to have them. It's it's weird to call someone a partner that's not involved in the day-to-day operations of the store, but like I do, like they are my partner. And oftentimes when you hear me say we, like the we is me and my wife and Rich and his team. Like that's we open the store.
I say it all the time, and I'll scream it from the mountaintops, and I know there's bad ones and I know there's okay ones. The best distributors in this industry, if you don't see them as a partner and treat them accordingly, you're a fool, because they are worth their weight in gold. And you are another testament to that. And another thing that I have learned over the 12, 13 years I've been doing this now is that almost exclusively what I call the top operators in the laundromat industry, they have that relationship with a distributor. Now, they've invested in it too. The distributor doesn't just trip and it happens, but the laundromat owner-operator doesn't just trip and find a great distributor. A lot of times they have to go find them. I mean, sometimes they do. Just happen to find a great one, and I'm actually an example of that. I totally stumbled into my relationship. But you also have to invest in that, is my point. So for everybody listening out there, here's another example. I know I scream it from the mountaintops. Here's another example of someone that definitely correlates his success so far and his continued success in the future to that partnership, which is the word you used. And I think that is a good reflection of things to come for you, my friend. So good for you. All right. So you found this location and signed a lease the next day, I understand, right?
Yeah. It was just like that, right? No. So let's just say it was, the first week of June, a vacant building, right? And had been like, the story of Payless Shoe Stores is pretty much told. So they all went out of business about the same time. And I signed my lease, I think it was October 30th. So 5 months later. Yeah, and
so was all that time spent negotiating? Like,
no, like there was definitely negotiations. And this, another place where like you want to know the value of having a partner in your distributor. Like I was new. Rich led the negotiations on that, and what to look for and what to negotiate hard on and whatnot. Like, oh God, like that, like you talk about gold, right? There's a pile of it right there. But it was just like it wasn't us, right? The landlord didn't seem terribly motivated to get the building filled, and it was surprising. Like maybe they were still like getting paid by Payless as lease was running out. Who knows? I don't know. But it just took forever. Patience is a virtue in this case, and we came to a point and we signed a lease, and at that point, so this October 30th, and we're like, all right, let's get those final plans drawn up and all that, and we'll get the paperwork submitted. And so we submitted to the city for the permits in late December, and kind of expected a 4-5 week turnaround. And probably the first week of January, we got a response. It's like, 14 to 16 weeks for approval. It's like, oh boy.
Wow.
Yeah. And so Rich was like, he was surprised. I was surprised. So at that point, it was like I'd coined the term permit purgatory. That's where I felt. We were just checking all that stuff. And, then once we got the permits, like, it was funny. Rich and this team, they set a timeline that they said it was aggressive. It was 90 days. And they're like, we're not going to make this, but this is a schedule, but I'm setting your expectations and all that. And like, we like the construction gods looked upon us and it's literally, there wasn't a single case where a contractor didn't show up when they said they were, or subcontractor, when they were going to show up and finish their work by when they said they were going to do it. And we came in right around that 90 days. And like, I was almost not ready. I was like, man, I thought I was going to get a little more summer, but my summer ended on July 26th. And that was fine. But yeah, it took it was a lot of patience and waiting, but like I said, it's one of those things where I can only control what I can control. And so, during the permit stuff, like, what can I control? Well, I can't control anything there, but like, what else can I do? I spent a lot of time putting my powers to work, like mocking up store designs in PowerPoint for colors and things like that. But really, that's when I started. I put up my website. I started working on my Google My Business profile. I started working on all those things so hopefully once people started hitting Laundromat Near Me in July, that I would have enough credibility that my links would appear towards the top of the page. And I can tell you, like, I don't know if what I did worked, but the numbers I get from Google My Business on my reports on like that alone is like many times more valuable than my website, right? The first place I post stuff now is there. And like, it's just like, I did that stuff and do what I could do and then get ready. And on July 26th, we opened our door, and like, fortunate, like, super well received by the community. You talk about elevating the industry, Dave, and like, I don't think there's a unique idea in the entire store, right? It's all stuff I've grabbed, like listening to people and things like that. But when you bring this concept of a modern laundromat to an area for the first time, like, people are blown away. They don't expect this stuff. And it's just like, that's to talk about how your customer experiences delivers on your value prop and your brand. They like walking like, oh, wow, like, this is a place I want to be. And so, yeah, it's like, I've been well received, getting great reviews, business is growing, like, still got to grow more to get to my aspirations, but I'm feeling like we're getting to a good place with the team, solid customer base. And like, now's the time, probably, late September, early October, probably closer to early October, because it's now mid-September, is when we start the marketing push.
I'm curious, going back to identifying the building location and then also the lease, what advice could you give our listeners as far as what does a good piece of property have? I know you said you wanted a standalone building. Maybe talk about why you wanted that and other factors about that property. And then also, what are you looking for in a good lease?
Okay, the standalone building, it wasn't a deal breaker, but now that I have it, I love it. Probably the number one thing you get in a standalone building is more control and more parking that is yours, right? Parking, right? Like, that is just it. Like, and it's so fun. It's also fun to be able to look on your cameras, and like, you can literally look outside and just tell by the number of cars in the parking lot, because they're only parking in front of your spot.
All your cars.
Yeah, they're all my cars.
That's right.
So I love that. I know I am in part of a broader retail complex, right? But I'm this one standalone in there. The other part is like I have complete, well, within the approvals of my landlord, I got to paint the outside of the building how I wanted, put up the signage that I wanted. And I tell you, when I talk about punching above your weight, like, this is what on day one, or even when I started interviewing employees, they're like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, this looks like a cool place, or this is a laundromat, or this stuff. Like I said, they thought from day number one that I was a national franchise. Like, brand is like my customer experience. Like, having the building gives me complete control from the time they hit the parking lot to the time they go back out into it. So,
in that realm, did you look at buying the building, or was that not an option? Were they not willing to sell it, or?
They're not willing to sell. Definitely would have loved to buy. So much to the point that probably, one of the things that we were negotiating for was right of first refusal if they chose to sell. Ultimately, I didn't get that, and the real estate broker was great in explaining like why. What it'd be like, it's almost like it's a red flag if the landlord would accept that when it comes time to selling the building, because like, they're part of a broader complex. And if a large national chain came in and wanted to buy out, this building where the small grocery store is, like the fact that I would be able to thwart that, was a good call. But yeah, I definitely like, I would love like to own the building. Mostly like, and it's not that's not my control thing that I expressed early on. That's more an investment thing. Like I would love to have, it's part of our portfolio more in commercial real estate, especially one where I'm in and know that I'm going to pay the rent. At least if things keep going the way they're going.
Yes. We've evolved into that, and we are big fans of that. We own a couple of our buildings now and would love to own them all. So I definitely teach people, if you're in that situation, that's something that you should definitely, not necessarily make a deal breaker, but definitely something you should pursue if you're able to. So yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah. And the lease, like, I guess it's time. Like, I get a lot of it comes down to like, what's your financing company going to accept? I think that gives you a good framework to go on. So we were most important on negotiating length and then extensions, right? If things are going well, that's where we spend a lot of time. We definitely spent, when there was stuff being negotiated, it was like who was going to put what into the building. So I was fortunate that we were able to get them to make the utility upgrades. Yeah, and I wasn't able to get them to pay up front for a lot of the storefront improvements we made to the building. But we were able to negotiate rent credits on that stuff. And like, I was fortunate. If people haven't explored, if you have a 401k or IRA, right? I used the rollover for business startup program. I went through a company called Guidant. So I was fortunate that I could use that capital to make that investment up front, not only to deliver my experience, but it's also providing me kind of a nice runway as the business grows. Is like my rent isn't due for a while. My triple net's due every month, but my rent isn't due for a while. But yeah, I think length and and also it's like just be aware. And again, this goes back to having a partner that knows what they're doing, because one of the things that did take time was getting the landlord over the hump on what the financing company wanted written into the lease. So they could, essentially take control of the store first if I defaulted on that stuff. And,
Did they balk at that?
At first it took time, but it was also, they knew it was one of the non-negotiables. And I think I don't think it was really about that term. It was that it was unfamiliar and there was an education process and, that they had to go through. And also, it also takes time. That's one of those things where anyone would go back to their lawyer and say, really, are these guys worth it? Like, I want the business in my complex, but do I want to give this away? So that stuff takes time.
Yeah, I've experienced that too. We've experienced that they balk at it because they usually haven't been asked that or put that in front of them before. And then once you do you said an education process, once you educate them on what it is, once they read it, they have their attorney read it, then they usually, I don't know if back down is the right word, but they usually come to the table with a pretty open mind, has been my experience.
Yeah,
absolutely. Fantastic.
So now let's hear about this store.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell us like what's your equipment makeup? You said it's 4,000 square feet. Like, how much of that is storage? How much of that is customer space?
Yeah, so 4,000, let's see, probably 3,500 square feet is customer space. Maybe it's 3, I don't know. So we have 70 machines, 38 washers, 32 dryers. All of my dryers are 50-pound double stacks. This is one of the things in the permitting process. We actually had 4 bigger ones, the single ones. And for some reason, the code was written as such that we would have had to be able to get a wheelchair into the room behind where the dryers were. And so we had to switch dryers. It was just crazy. Like, we tried to explain, like, this isn't a room where it would go, but it was an accessibility requirement. So, we went out. So now I have, more double stacks, but it's easy thing to explain to customers. All my dryers are the same on that stuff. 4 different sizes, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 load on that side of the equation. But I think a lot of this, more of my space is dedicated to being open. My aisles are about 11 feet wide, 10, 11 feet wide between the machines.
Good for you. Everybody listen to that real well, because that is way more important than most people in the industry give that credit for. Why did you make that decision? And I'm willing to bet it goes back to your distributor's advice.
That's where it started. And when he described it to me, I was just like, yeah, it's kind of like when you go to the locker room and you bend over and you don't want to actually touch butts with the other guys. Like,
Yes.
and so it's like there's so much space, and like in a COVID world, I think people appreciate it. And but the other thing that I was kind of unexpected out of it is like, and we have tons of folding tables, like tons of folding tables. At times, I still think it's not enough. But what I was like, Rich, where are we going to put where are people going to put the carts? Like, where does that go? And he's like, oh, they put them under the tables. But essentially now the middle of these 11-foot aisles is essentially the cart parking lot. And it ends up working out really well. And I don't know if it's something that happened intentionally. I know we had them lined up there on day one, but like things make their way back, and that's right where people want to grab them, because like my store is heavily kind of on the washers are on the right side, and like 90+% of my dryers are on the far left side. So you kind of have this migration over, but somehow I have the automatic door, it's in the middle, and some of the carts kind of make it back there, and then they either get grabbed there or we put them in the parking lots between the rows, and it just seems to work out.
Fantastic. What other amenities do you have? Do you have ozone and you drop off laundry, pick up and delivery? What's your POS like? And assuming you have one, if you're 3-part tickets or whatever, do you do pick up and delivery? What are the those aren't all amenities. I don't want to throw
Yeah.
those all in one category.
Do you do coin? Do you do card?
Yeah. What's your prices
All
like?
right.
Anything you
Yeah,
want to share
we'll
with
go
us?
I am coinless. I decided from the start, kind of on that mantra of not buying myself a job. Like I didn't want to be so I'm all card. Don't regret it for a second. We use Laundroworks, right? Definitely it works out well. I still think, and this is one of my overall kind of beefs with the laundromat industry, is the tech is like 10 years behind. Like there's like, I wish there was APIs and things that I could use to tap into all the data that's there. Just so I could build my own reporting on top of theirs, because right now I do a lot of manual stuff and put it into Excel to get the numbers I want. But so I'm Laundroworks card system. Sense, I chose Sense for a point of sale. That was a decision that I switched right at the last minute when I found them, but I felt like I found, coming from tech, I felt like I found kindred spirit people there. Like that was it. But they were the only ones really that I could align with around customer experience vision, because kind of the mantra is your drop off and your self-service customers are two completely different sets of customers, and in between the worlds do not meet. Right. And like, I agree with that to a point, but I also think that there's a Venn diagram where they do overlap. And like when you have those seams, you have to think about the customer experience on that one. In the case of, so now, because I'm using Sense, right, if someone is normally a self-serve and they've loaded a ton of money on their Laundroworks card, they can come up to the counter and they can pay with the Laundroworks card and use that balance that's already there. Like we're going to lean into gift cards essentially over the holidays, just because we have that type of functionality on there. But the other thing that was really, I was drawn to Sense was on the whole pickup and delivery side, drop off. Like, so we do drop off. We haven't pushed it. It's amazing, kind of the organic stuff that we're getting, and just makes you want to grow more. Like the second most amount of space I have allocated to is shelves. And I still wish the room was bigger, but that was kind of what we had to do on that side. But I definitely want to do pickup and delivery. But kind of like in my bio, like I'm trying to get my feet under me. Like I went into this business because it is a fairly simple business, and I don't know that how much I'm ready to do a logistical business, like to really, really nail pickup and delivery. So with Sense, I can dabble my feet and do it because, they have the pickup and delivery via DoorDash and Uber. And like, that's a way to get started. And like, that's one of those places where you have these overlaps, because, when you get a customer who brings their stuff in to drop off, but on their notification, you can say, hey, you busy? Click here, schedule DoorDash to do it, right? That's a value add to their life. And then the other thing is that, and it's more kind of not a sense statement, but it's a pickup and delivery thing, is I'm really like trying to understand pricing and how people perceive stuff. And like, how do you price? Do you charge for delivery? Do you not? Right. And while I get all that sorted out, like I set my price for the value that I deliver in doing the laundry. And they set a price for what you are taking to do pickup or delivery, right? And that, I think, draws a fine line of who's providing what service. And I think the customers that are likely to be the DoorDash users and stuff are already familiar with that. Like they're familiar that there's a cost to get stuff delivered that is separate from the service. So I think, at least for me right now, I think that, when we start turning that on in spades, that's going to pay off for me to help me on be firm on my pricing and really, reinforce the value that we are providing. And because that whole convenience factor on delivery is it's a different and unique value.
Can I ask you a question? You made a comment, and maybe I misheard you, or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. You said when you found the Sense team, you felt like you were kindred spirits. Is that, maybe there's nothing to that, and if there is, just tell me, but I kind of felt like it was like a people behind the product kind of comment, or is it more just you're from tech, they're from tech, and so we're buddies? Am I reading nothing into that, or did you really, see the people behind the product and you were like, hey, those are good people doing good stuff? Like what was your thought?
Yes. So one, it was easy to have a conversation with Alex because of our essentially shared backgrounds, right? There was essentially a shorthand to our conversations early on. And what I had to get over essentially, and when you look at kind of especially on the POS side, right? There's solutions that were built by laundry people that did tech, right? And probably were skilled. And then there's these other solutions that are built by tech people that are learning the laundromat industry, right? And that it's tough. That is probably the hardest part, especially given the history when you look at, how different vendors have come and gone. But what I ultimately felt was they were a good match for me personally. And I believed in their tech and their approach. I was comfortable with their investors and their business model. And then when I talked to their existing customers, I felt that there was staying power. And, the other part of the Sense thing that, because we're not tapping into, our drop-off business is tiny now, but that whole, I totally tried to call BS on Alex in one of our first calls on this whole idea of a operating system for laundromats. And look, man, I came from the operating system of operating systems. And it's oh my God, they really are. We use the tasks and the till management, all that stuff.
Can you talk about that? Because I'm guessing most people don't know what that is, and I don't know a lot of it. What do you mean by what you just said?
So it's called, it has point of sale, right? It does that stuff. It allows us to track our things through the process. But, if you look at, so the two things we're using most, right? Task lists, right? And this is one of those things where when I talk about systems and processes, it's also about, really it's about defining expectations and helping people achieve those things. So my attendants know what they need to do on a given shift. And we started off on paper. That's another thing. It's I start off on paper before you invest in tech, because you got to figure out what's right. But once we had that done on paper, I thought we'd be on paper for longer, but they made a couple tweaks on the task side that helped us. And we go in there. So now they go in and they're checking off the task lists, and I can download reports on what was done and see any notes that people put in there. That alone, and getting rid of that paper and having to just transcribe thing from one place to another, it exports into Excel, which is my favorite piece of software on the entire planet, rows and columns. And I look at it and I pivot table it and all sorts of crazy stuff. So it's that, right? That's really helpful. And then the cash drawer management, again, we were able to take a process that was steeped in paper and move that over to their tablet. So I know what's in the till. I can go track the cash in and out. We can design our processes around it. And again, there's reports. I can do stuff, and it's a lot more fail safe, especially just when it comes to math, right? It's really easy to do math wrong, but it's at the end of the day, if you've cashed out, you've dropped a big bill into the safe, and it's this, but at the bottom it says, hey, you said there's $330 in the till, but we're expecting 340, right? It's okay, that's the first signal to go back and recount and find, oh yeah, there's that 10 that stuck to the other bill, right? It's that kind of stuff that honestly is, for me right now, it's more valuable than the point of sale stuff. But then they add other stuff that they just recently plugged in the ability to track, to assign washers to jobs. And I think that's probably a fundamental thing, right? But, just like, even though we're not doing everything wholesale, like that was another thing. Now my attendants, they only have to, because we're not using the whole payment side and their terminal stuff at the machine, we use our LaundryWorks card. Now all my attendants need to do is write down order ID, laundry card number, right? And then I can go back, and when I want to look at the costs, like boom, because it's all there, because everything in LaundryWorks, all the machine stuff and the readers, I can go back and see that stuff. And it's, again, takes a step out of paper, because for me, at least for me, all this stuff is going to Excel anyway, and they take it right there. So yeah, that's like the operating system side of what I thought was credible.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned the pickup and delivery. You mentioned dabbling in DoorDash, that feature that you can turn on and off in sense to take a drop-off order and turn it into a pickup and delivery, or I guess even vice versa, if you wanted to. Is that, I know there's a lot of talk in the industry, so I don't know if you can shed any light on this or not with being a Sense user. There's a lot of talk in the industry that's not going to work. That's not going to work for pickup and delivery. Do you see the DoorDash feature as a business model, or do you see the DoorDash feature as a tool? Okay. Can you explain that? And I know you're not a pickup and delivery expert.
No.
I know a lot about it. So I'm kind of curious what you know.
It's tool and customer experience, right? So it also has benefits for me, but you take that example, like literally right now, and I just kind of turned it on last week. Nobody's used it yet. So who knows? I don't know what my attendants are going to do the first time a DoorDash person shows up, literally don't know. But if a customer needs to get it picked up, right, and that is there, it costs me zero. There's no additional fee to my Sense subscription to turn this on. I can choose to subsidize the delivery back to them if I want to. But what is the bad part of the customer experience about providing on-demand pickup and delivery? I think there is none. Mm-hmm. Now, when, if I look at it as a scheduled or a route-based one, haven't done yet. I'll just express my opinions on how I think about it. Is I don't want to invest in trucks and drivers and things like that yet on that side. So this is helpful, but honestly, when I get into schedules and route-based delivery, that is its own thing, right? At that time, you're making these commitments and doing this stuff. And I think, potentially those customers are looking for something different. There's clearly the on-demand opportunistic stuff that will take advantage of the DoorDash. And then there's the people on the other end that you sign up, and they're your regular customers, and you have control over where you go and do that stuff. So like they said, it is definitely, it's a tool for my existing customers experience thing. It's a tool for me to help me grow into what I think could be a lucrative part of the business, but will require me to build up an entirely different skill set and or hire an entirely different set of people that I have today. And I am not ready for that in week 8 of being open.
Yeah. And you're not my coaching client, but if you were, because I do a lot of business coaching for laundromat industry, I would tell you to give yourself a good 4 to 6 months. And I've had that. I'm not talking to you personally. I'm just saying in general, that's what I tell people. So I think my point is I think you're doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Get your feet wet, learn the business, get your operations, get your team in place. 4 to 6 months in, and it can always be longer, but 4 to 6 months in for most people is kind of a minimum that I would recommend that people start to bite off pickup and delivery, even on a smaller scale. Now, DoorDash is definitely something where you can kind of dip your toe in the water, and it doesn't require really anything of you because it just kind of happens from what I understand. So that's fantastic. Are you willing to talk about your prices?
Oh, totally.
What are your prices on your machines, and what's your market like? Do you see yourself as a high price leader, or what do you see there?
Definitely a high price leader. If you look at kind of the 2 closest laundromats to my store, each one's probably just a little under a mile, one's probably a mile and a half away, right? The one that would be north of me on the same arterial, this isn't my name for it, but like literally the customers that came in the store, it's like, yeah, I used to go to the laundromat next to the hooker motel, right? It is probably the epitome of it is probably not full zombie net, because, there's definitely people that come in and take care of it, but it's, older equipment, like that's fine. That exists. They are always going to beat me on price. There's one that's south of me. Probably we're competing for the same customers. I am a little higher priced than them, I think, but it's funny, the feedback I get from customers is that some of their customers that have switched over is their net cost is the same or a little less because my dryers are faster. So, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, it's one of those humps, and we're still trying to figure out a way to, I'm fully attended. So to communicate to people you're going to look at our prices, but like, let's look at the full thing and the value of your time, because I think more often than not, I'm probably going to come out the same or a little bit better. And I'm fine with that, because I also want terms like, I don't have this belief that people want to be in a laundromat for a long time. So they value speed. Like, I don't have cafes, I don't have snacks, I don't have all that stuff. And like, I want to provide a great experience while you're there, but I also think that you want to get onto other things in your life. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. So my 20-pound machines are $489. 40s are $839, 60s are $1139, and my 80s are $1439. Dryers are 39 cents for 5 minutes on that side. And as soon as I get the new signage in, those prices are going to change effectively. I kept things simple for us up front. So it was cold, hot, or cold, warm, or hot, all the same price, right? So when we make the switch, that peg in the middle that I gave you now, that's our warm price. Customers that like cold, you'll go down a little bit, and the customers that want hot, you're going to go up a little bit. And I'm also going to tweak my dryer prices, I think up to like 44 cents on that side of the equation. Because now I also now know a little bit more about my utilities costs and things like that. But I think it's fair. I mean, ask me a month after if my people have been able to explain it to folks. But kind of in conjunction with that, I'm planning on doing a really aggressive, wash house style, double your dollars on that one on card loads to see if I can, offer value and also maybe hide the price increase a little bit. But we'll see. Yeah. So that's me. My drop off stuff right now. $1.79 introductory special that I was going to end in September, but because I decided that we weren't ready yet, because I didn't think we were skilled enough in delivering a consistent product, we're keeping it there. That'll go up to $1.99 or $2.09, probably $2.09, because then I have room for better promotions to bring it down to that $1.99 price point, and really, because like everybody, you have your slow days. Like, I think I can do incentives, but keep that price a little higher, especially on the weekends. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I believe in 3 price points on stuff for decision making. So we have our middle price point. I don't even know what the cost is. No one is taking advantage of it. I call it wash and bag, or the college student special. Everything in one washer on cold, and we throw it in a bag and we give it back to you. Set that price right, and no one will ever change it, because they'll see that you'll fold it for a little bit more. And then one of my customers early on created the fold only option, because she can't. It was probably day 3. We had a call. She's like, I just got back from vacation. I've done all my laundry. We have all this other stuff going on. Would you fold my laundry for me? I was like, sure, why not? And she's like, how much does it cost? I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. And I'm like, let's try 99 cents. I go, I don't know if I'm going to do this again. And she's like, totally fine. She comes back, and then the next week, her kid had a judo tournament in Portland. So they come back, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, yes, it's $1.09 this week. And like, those were the orders early on that like I did. I learned, I sweated and all that stuff. And like, so I think now our fold only is probably, if it's not there, it's going to be like $1.19, $1.29. So yeah, so we have fold only, wash and bag, and then we call our premium wash and fold. But I can't say that I have a lot of people beating me down their doors for the other stuff. The cheaper ones right now.
Yeah. Well, my experience has been with drop off and pickup and delivery. Those are usually not price sensitive customers. And for that matter, even when we're providing a premier, what I call a modernized laundromat, even your self-serve customers are typically not too price sensitive when you're delivering that value proposition at the top of the industry.
That's one of the things I've taken from you over the past year. Trust me, like my conviction
Good.
about pricing is really, it's like whenever it's like, that's what Dave says. So I'm going to go there, and but like I said, I think like a lot of times, like we've never met, but like I know from listening to you that we are principle and philosophically aligned. Like you talk about value prop, right? And you price for your value prop. It's like I'm right behind that. Like let me try it and see if it works. And like I still think, like I said, I think that there's room. I could be a little too cautious, but I think after 10 weeks going with a price change, because it's not going to be an increase for everything. I think it's the right thing to do, but it will also leave room for me to go further. Look at it again 6 months down the road and decide if that's the time.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. That's I'm very confident that it works, and I've learned it from other people. So you didn't learn it from me. You learned it from those that came before us. I just happen to be good at repeating stuff.
Look, like I told you, I don't know that there's a unique idea in my store.
I agree.
Right? I just provide them in a unique way.
I agree. That probably the only difference is I'm willing to put myself out there and tell people about it. Where a lot of times where I learn these things is like behind closed doors at the clean show, and a lot of people aren't willing to be the public person and put their opinions and beliefs out there. And quite frankly, a lot of people don't want the rest of the industry to know what they do and why they do. And I'm just more of an abundance mindset kind of guy versus a scarcity. So I want the whole industry to know because I want us all to be better and I want us to serve our communities better. So
there's definitely stuff you want to hold close to the vest, but the stuff I would hold that stuff out there. It's,
yeah.
I'll compete. Like I'm always, if my two closest laundromats and even the third one down the road or another, that's fine. Like this is me. Like, that like you can walk into my store and figure all this stuff out. And like, I'm going to compete on customer experience. And like, fortunately, I know the real estate situation in the immediate area and I know what I put in the store. And I think I have a decent sized moat that I can protect by continuing to focus on my customer experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good for you. I'm so glad to hear it's working. And just for the record, it's working for people all over the country. And so, for those of you out there listening and trying to learn and get better today than you were yesterday, the reality is this works. This is not a Dave Menz thing. It's not a Brian Riseland thing. This just works. This is just business, people. Yep. So, take a chance. If you feel a little uncomfortable, hey, push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yes.
And you may learn a few things.
100%.
I know that's how I learned, and I know that's how you're learning, so good for you. Well, listen, man, we're going to wrap this episode up, and I thank you so much, and I was very confident before the episode, before we recorded, even before we spoke to you offline, that this was going to be an amazing episode, and I am 100% certain that's the case now.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for taking the time to do it. We want to do two last things unless Carla has something. One of them is, we don't do this enough. I don't want to do this more because I'm really big on like reading and research and resources, and we want to share more of that stuff. And I know in your guest form that you sent over to us before the show, you had 2 books that you talked about, and we don't have to go into this much, but I want to put these resources out there because you took the time to single them out. One of them is called, these are books, I believe.
They're books.
One of them is called Read It.
Radical Candor.
Radical Candor, okay, and that's by Kim Scott. Tell us about that book real quick.
That book influenced my management style more than anything else. It's a great book for managers, but if anybody just goes and search Radical Candor and do it in your Google Images, you'll see it's a grid that talks about care deeply and communicate directly, right? And there's 4 quadrants. And essentially, the reason why it was important for me is like it talked about how if you're not candid with your people, it's not being, there's a quadrant called obnoxious aggressiveness, right? And that's not it. But if you're not candid with your people, you're actually taking away their opportunity to grow by not giving them the direct feedback in a respectful fashion, right? So radical candor on that diagram is the upper right, the desired state. I operated a lot in what's called ruinous empathy. Like I was afraid to deliver the hard messages, and because I was hopeful that things would improve and they would just get better. And like, even if you don't read past there's other great stuff in that book, but even if you only read that far or watch one of her talks online, like apply that, because I can tell you, like, I read that when I was at Microsoft. I had to put it in play early on. And I thought it was going to be scary, but like the employee took it so well that it was, and I actually told them in my introductory meeting with the team, I showed them the grid and like, just so you know, like, this is how I'm trying to be and I'm going to be. So you can expect it. Right. And you can call me on it if you think I'm being rude, but I shared the framework with them because I wanted them to know that we were going to be about direct and respectful communication.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I think that's going to really serve your team well I know it is, as you continue to build your organization into what you want it to be. That's amazing. What was the other book?
The other book is called It Takes What It Takes. It's by a guy named Trevor Moet. Yeah. He is, unfortunately he passed away just this week due to cancer, which was totally unexpected, but he's a mental skills coach for Russell Wilson, as well as he's worked with a lot of, major football programs. That book, I have given it to more people, mostly coaches and athletes. But it is a lot. My biggest, and like, trust me, like, you see the number of pages and notes I took on this thing, like, there's so much, but his thing is all about neutral thinking. Right. And it's not, and it's steeped in two things. Is, well, a lot of the trying to tell someone just to be positive, it can be difficult based on their background and things like that. And he found this a lot with athletes, because the elite athletes he was working with are very quick to dismiss mental skills coaches and all this stuff. They sense BS really fast. And so someone telling them just to be positive, they were skeptical of that. But I think it's what he learned when he was with Nick Saban at the University of Alabama, when they were doing some work. And what their decision was to not try to get their players to be positive. It was to get them just to be not negative. Right. And the reason why this is important is negative talk influences you 5 times more than positive talk. And your self-talk has 10 times the impact on what anyone else says to you. So if you are talking to yourself negatively, it is 50 times more impactful than the other stuff. Wow. And I have to tell you, like, that crystallizes stuff. And as you talked about kind of how I went through the past year, and like, there was no major setbacks, but dealing with stuff, it's just like, no, like, the situation is what it is. I'm not going to bring any judgment to it. I'm going to approach it and deal with it for what it is.
That sounds like an awesome, just like, life lesson book.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you come from the sports world, I think people are more in tune with it, because there's a little, I don't want to call it aggression because it's the wrong term, but I could definitely see how some of the stories just might turn off people who haven't been in sports. But just, like, trust me, please, like, everybody should find something in this book, or just watch him, like, find him, search him on Twitter, read his Twitter feed, or find one of his talks. Like, you'll be better off for it, or you can decide to discard it and think it's complete BS. But, like, it was, like I said, I've never given away a book to more people than this one.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing those. Listen, man, as I mentioned earlier, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend it with us and to give back to the industry. I know you're grateful for where you are today. I've been able to pick up on that through our conversations and through LinkedIn and things like that. I don't know that you need to hear from me, but I'm going to tell you anyways. I'm proud of you. You're doing good stuff, and I know there's many other people doing good stuff. So, guys, if you guys are out there, you want to tell your story, come on and be a part of the show. Check out our website, laundromatmillionaire.com. Brian, before we let you go today, any last parting words? And then the last thing I'll throw in there too is, how can people reach you? How can people connect with you if they want to get to know you?
No, so the parting words are like, it's kind of what we talked about offline. It's like everybody has something to contribute, right? Like, don't be afraid. I don't know if I was afraid, but I didn't know if I was ready when we spoke. And, like, I feel like, we've talked for an hour and a half or something, and there's still more to tap into. So, like, I would just say, take advantage of the open door that Dave's guest forum provides, because you just may find out something about yourself in the process, and it's just fun to talk. Reaching me, like I said, I'm a huge social media consumer more than a poster. So I would just say, and also my 20 plus years at Microsoft, email, if you want to talk to me, like, hit me up an email. It's awesome. It's Brian, BRIAN at laundry-genius.com. You can find me there. If that's too much, go to the website, right? Fill out the contact form at the bottom. I'm still in the early stages, right? All roads on social media and everything, they lead back to me eventually. So, but that's that. But, like, for me, email is always great. Because I can tackle it and get back to you, and we can talk more and whatnot.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you so much for being here with us today. And to our audience watching and listening to this at home, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time for another great episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Take care, guys.